Welcome to the Winning Edge podcast, where we share focus, fueling, and faith-filled stories and strategies to give young athletes the tools they need to become the best versions of themselves as athletes and individuals.
What you eat and how you think can transform your athletic performance and overall well-being. Whether you're an athlete, coach, or fitness enthusiast looking to gain that mental edge and optimize your health, this podcast is for you. We are your hosts. I'm Lindsay, former collegiate athlete, coach, educator, and educational coach for over 20 years, and a mom of 2 young athletes.
And I'm Stacy, registered dietitian nutritionist of 18 years and a mom of 2 young athletes.
Okay, so I wanted to share this with you because I kind of mentioned it earlier today, but it leads right into what our podcast is about today. A few nights ago, I was laying in bed and I couldn't sleep and I just had a million things on my mind. So I did the worst thing possible and got on TikTok.
Oh my God, you doom scrolled.
I did. Yeah. I don't know, I just can waste so much time on TikTok at night if I can't sleep.
You know, we just did a sleep podcast on the importance of not watching social media an hour before bedtime.
Oh, yeah.
I would die. Yes.
I would die. It was like 1 a.m. too. So I'm, scrolling and just mindless videos. And this one video came up and it was posted by this guy named Chase Harris. And in the video, it was just him and his son. And his son has spina bifida, and Chase was helping him learn how to get himself and his support walker that he has up over this curb. And he said in the video, this is the biggest curb on the street. So if you can do this, you can do any of them.
You can do it.
That's
awesome.
And the way that the father spoke, like the words of encouragement and how supportive he was and his positivity literally had me crying in my bed.
But he was also challenging. I don't think,
yes.
He was challenging his son at the same time he was encouraging him. And I think sometimes we think those things are in conflict with one another.
Absolutely. And it was like the perfect blend of it. And I thought, oh my gosh, I wish everybody could see this video. And so I'm going to share it on our Stan TikTok page just because I want more people to see it. I think it's like over 2 million views or something. But the reason I'm bringing it up is because this sweet kiddo overcame this obstacle and completed the task without the task resulting in some reward. It was pure intrinsic motivation. There wasn't money being bribed, wasn't a prize, there wasn't some materialistic thing that he was getting as a result of it.
Oh my gosh, what is that even, like in this day and age,
right?
They all need money or they all need some kind of reward.
Like, what am I doing?
We need gamification.
Yes. Yeah. And so his internal desire to overcome that obstacle, it moved me. And his tears.
Clearly you and 2 million other people. Yeah. So it's probably very good.
So it was so powerful. But when he was crying and it was like he realized that he conquered that task, that was the hardest thing he had done, at that the excitement of accomplishing it, that was all he needed. That was the only thing that he needed as a reward. And, the dad did hug him, of course, but it was so powerful to me because we live in a society where everyone's immediate gratification, kids especially, and they want the results of their work. And sometimes they want results without any work at all.
Oh my gosh. I would second that. I think we have this conversation quite often with our youngest son who is like, he loves to compete. He's very competitive. He likes to win, right? But he wants those immediate rewards. And sometimes we're like, our oldest is like, he'll work. He doesn't care how much work it takes. And he doesn't actually care about the reward. He's in it for the work.
He's in it.
I think, we have to be really careful today that we don't gamify or reward everything. Some of that is, how do we build that? That's what we're talking about today. How do we build intrinsic motivation?
Exactly. So, a lot of times when we see that, people don't want to do hard things or they don't want to face challenges because it's scary or it's too much work. And they're like, what's in it for me before they even start? And I'm like, what do you mean what's in it? You learn to dig deep, right? You push through, you set a goal, you work for it. Like, hello, like that's the whole point. And it's worth more than some materialistic or monetary reward. And I think we're quite literally faced with multiple generations right now of young adults and children who lack intrinsic motivation. And that's scary to me.
Yeah. So let's talk about intrinsic motivation, because I feel like for those that don't know what it is, talk to our listeners about what is intrinsic motivation. And if you're listening to this and you're a parent or a coach and you're like, oh, I'm rewarding that way, how do you make sure that you're not kind of setting your kiddos up for failure and that you are really taking intrinsic motivation and how you think about framing these experiences through that lens. Talk to us a little bit more about these things.
So intrinsic motivation, I'm going to focus on it for athletes, but it's applicable obviously to anybody who is listening, adults. Like there's no limit on age group or what your profession or what path you're on is. So intrinsic motivation, it's referring to that internal drive that you have to participate in sports or to excel in your career. And it's based on your personal enjoyment and the satisfaction and the genuine interest that you have in the activity itself, rather than what's in it for me and what's the reward and recognition going to be. You know, I like to think of it like, you know, when in church, right, we're called to do things for others. Well, some people do things for others just to post it and get the clout for it, versus some people do so many good things that they never ask to be recognized for. They don't want that recognition. And so I think of it like that. Like, what's your reason for what you're doing?
Well, and it's self-improvement. At the end of the day, I mean, it goes back to, we talk a lot about having a growth mindset, and whether it's you and I thinking about ourselves and how do we continually grow as people to be better versions of ourselves today and tomorrow than yesterday. It's teaching at a young age, like that growth mindset and this sort of internal compass of motivation that's powering that growth mindset of like, how does this like single skill that I'm developing then make me a better fielder? How does this single skill make me a better hooper? How does this like working on agility make me a better athlete all around?
And how does this experience make me a better teammate? How does it make me a better leader? Is this going to help me become more successful in the classroom because I've learned how to navigate a conflict? See that in friends. Like, it's just the big picture. And part of that also too, outside of skill improvement, it's not just personal growth, but learning the new techniques and mastering them so that you can see results. And I think that's something important to remember. Intrinsic motivation needs to have results that can be seen by the person who's doing the work, right? Because you have to keep up. If you never see progress, then you start to fall behind on like.
A huge part of that too is slowing down enough to, number one, set micro goals. So be able to like, if your goal is, hey, I want to be a better fielder, and you're out there fielding ground ball, it's like, you know, 9 out of 10 of these, I'm going to get perfectly right. It's like that intrinsic motivation, you're still kind of setting these micro level goals, but then you're also taking time to celebrate the success of those micro goals. Where I think sometimes where we get lost in these bigger needing extrinsic rewards and motivation is when we don't do that, and the reward is monetization or the reward is winning, and we're not finding joy in the process of all the small pieces.
And that's, you know, some of the characteristics of the athletes who are intrinsically motivated. The first one that I think is crucial is enjoyment and satisfaction. So you're playing the game because you love it. You have to enjoy it. Like, look, if you're forcing your kid to play a sport or to continue to play a sport, there's absolutely zero motivation internally on the kid's part. And so what's the point of showing up to the games? What's the point of showing up to practice if they're miserable?
Which I will say, you know, it's crazy because the whole sports has gotten really out of hand. And so much of it is your kid playing? My kid is like, it's more of a comparison game. And I think there are kids that are out there that they just truly love it. And so I will say a big piece that drives intrinsic motivation that you talk about is enjoyment and satisfaction. And you talk about these in the book, but we can steal those as parents.
Yes, we absolutely can.
Easily.
And I think that's part of this part of enjoyment and satisfaction is, you know, we had a guest on, Blake Harris, and her son Jackson, and she said, you know, she's letting Jackson define what success is to him. That ties into this. If your kid is not happy playing that sport and you're forcing them to continue, there's no enjoyment. There's not going to be success ever as a goal for that kid with that sport. They have to decide what makes them happy, and it might not be sports.
Yeah, and she kind of said that when she said, you know, my husband and I, we both played collegiate sports, and my husband was more sad about this decision than even I was. And so I think we can tend to do that if we're not really careful, is just kind of suck the joy out of it and put a lot of pressure that doesn't need to be there at really young ages. And then if they don't have that enjoyment and satisfaction, they don't have one of the key things it takes to have strong intrinsic motivation.
And, you know, with that too, you think, okay, if they're not happy too, probably isn't that they're not that great either because they're not enjoying it. So so you can't be like, oh man, they're really not getting better. We're going to add more to it. No, because they're miserable. It doesn't matter how many practices you schedule, how many private coaches you set up with lessons. It's not going to change if your kid is not enjoying what they're doing. And the third part of that is it's going to affect the team dynamic and the vibe because they're miserable.
Yeah. Well, so that's one of the things. Talk about some of the other things that you talk about in the book. So enjoyment and satisfaction is one thing that drives intrinsic motivation, but what are some other things?
Skill and personal growth focus. So in concentrating on improving their abilities and enjoying that journey of self-improvement, which ties into, are they goal orientated, right? So they have to like that process. Motivation is often tied to the process and performance and the goals rather than outcome goals like winning medals. So if you're focusing on smaller that leads you to the long-term goals, that's where you're going to see more of the results happen, which is going to build that intrinsic motivation. It increases your confidence and your self-efficacy with that as well, because these athletes typically experience greater self-esteem and confidence when they see themselves improving. I mean, that just goes hand in hand. So you set goals, you see the results, that boosts your confidence. Now you're ready to continue the process and it becomes enjoyable, which creates success.
Well, and I love this because I saw a great video the other day and it was with Kobe Bryant and he was coaching up a kid. I think maybe I sent it to you, but I was like, this is a really great one. And he's in the gym during practice and he's like, look around. Do you see anybody here? And it's like nobody, right? It's the team and they're just practicing. And he's like, here's where you set goals. Here's where you work hard.
Absolutely.
Here's where you do the crazy things so that when you go out on the stage to perform, you've already perfected it and you're really good at it. And so I think, again, it goes back to that, making sure they're having enjoyment and fun, but making sure they're setting real process-oriented kind of growth-focused goals that are smaller and micro that lead to a macro.
And that's something that I love that we offer with our mindset coaching, because we can take a kid who has this giant goal, right?
I want to play in the NFL.
Awesome.
And you're like, okay, that's great.
Love it. But like, let's break that down. There's 50 other goals, right? Just before you can get to high school. And then we're going to have 100 more goals from there. So just I need to work with athletes to really help them understand, like, what is the difference between long-term goal setting and short-term goal setting, and how is it measurable to build that process?
Well, and breaking that down into, okay, well, then back that all the way up to, then what does that mean you need to do in this 10 years? Okay, well, then what does that mean you need to do in this 1 year?
Yeah.
All right, what does that mean you need to do each month? Okay, what does that mean you need to do this week? Okay, what does that mean your daily habits need to look like?
Well, and us as parents, we have to understand that. And we have to be okay with that too. Like it's hard for us to even look at, okay, this is where I want to be in 4 years. This is where I want to be in a year. But when we sit down, right, something as simple as a vision board, just kind of mapping out, where do you want to be in 10 years? Okay, now backwards plan that out. What has to happen to get there? Because we're impatient too.
Yeah.
Kids are way
and they're
more
even more like their
us.
prefrontal cortex isn't even fully developed. So they're even more.
It also helps with better focus and resilience. They're less distracted. They're going to handle mistakes better. There's less stress. It is a greater consistency and motivation, right? So you become more confident taking risks and pursuing the process-oriented goals, because you know if the plan isn't working, that's okay. You can just adjust and reset as needed. It's not a big deal because you enjoy that process. Like you become obsessed with that process because the internal gratification you get from seeing your hard work is bigger than any outside reward.
So what if folks listening are saying like, okay, that's not my athlete naturally. They're motivated by money, or they're motivated by wins, or they're motivated by their personal performance or accolades. Like, what's the mindset that's needed or the support that's needed to help them get into a place where they can like really lean into having greater intrinsic motivation or stay motivated intrinsically?
Yeah, it's a process, but there's the abbreviation CAP. Okay. So when an athlete can stay in a CAP headspace and continue with the pursuit of their goals, it's because their motivation is nurtured by these three things. And it's CAP because of the
like
acronym.
C is in cat, A is in apple,
and P is in Paul.
Okay, got it.
So C is competence. So are they feeling effective and capable in their activities, right? So that's why it's good to know, like, okay, this goal that you set is a great goal, but that's not attainable yet. What is a smaller goal that you can obtain within a month or within 3 months that can help you then set the next goal? So it's setting the smaller goals like steps, right? It's not just you're not climbing a mountain. Think of it more like you're going upstairs. So the competence is C. A is autonomy. do you have control and choice over your actions and your goals that you're setting? Okay. So autonomy, you have competence, you have autonomy. And the last one is partnership. And I love this one because athletes a lot of times are on teams. But while you want to grow as a team and have goals as a team, you can't lose sight of the fact that you have individual goals. And that is also your competition, right? I think individual athletes that are not on team sports, they get this a little bit easier when it comes to setting their own goals, but they have a harder time feeling connected and supported with a group, especially with their peers.
Well, and thinking about CAP, like partnership, I do think this one is really interesting to me because, and I want to talk about each of these. So competence, autonomy, and partnership. The last one is kind of where if you have a kiddo on a team and they're not feeling connected to others or they're not supported within a group, even if they have good competence, even if they're having a sense of control,
then there's a problem.
They might not feel as supported as they need to keep that intrinsic. And I'm saying this from a personal experience, to keep that intrinsic motivation and to want to do the thing because they don't feel connected.
And that's a good time for the parent too to have the conversation with a kid like, do you want to look for another team? There's nothing wrong with that.
Well, setting them up for success, putting them in an environment where they're going to be able to thrive.
And be supported.
And we're not talking about jumping teams every 5 minutes. We're talking about how do you really assess as a parent, and you can only know this best, what's the best environment for your kiddo to help nurture them and grow them.
Yeah.
You're looking for growth and learning is what we're fostering.
Because, you can be on a great team and it can be a bunch of great kids that are playing and, great family dynamic, a great coach even. But if the kids aren't feeling like they have support of their team members, it can ostracize them. It can make them feel like the outsider, and that can really affect their
it can deter intrinsic motivation completely. But then this also kind of circles back to competence. So you want them feeling effective and capable. Let's just say they're on a team and everybody's at a skill level 1 up from where they are. That can also impact intrinsic motivation a little bit too.
Yes.
You want it to be competitive enough where they can see it and they can go, okay, I'm going to set a goal and going to grow. But you don't want it to be so much to the point where they're like, oh man, these kids are 2 years older than me. They're so much better. Because that can really mentally cause a decrease in intrinsic motivation.
When you're on a team, right, and there's kids that are better than you, that's good. You want there to, because you have to see an example of an athlete who can do something that you're like, I want to learn how to do that.
But maybe not in the case where you're like, you're on a majors team and you're AA skill level.
No, because then you feel like you're looking at like, I'm never going to get to that point.
It feels like I'm rocking you cannot.
And think of that as like, that's a long-term goal, but that's not supporting the goals to get to that point. So it's, we focus on that too when we're in education, and we're like, it's good when we partner kids up. I'm giving away some teacher tips here, right? So I used to partner my kids where I would rank my students from the strongest student I had in the classroom all the way down to my most struggling student. And I would number them down and I would group them into 4. And so my groups of the tables would always be 4 kids. And I would have one of my highest kids, one of my middle high, one of my middle lower kids, and one of my lowest performing kids at his table together. Because when there were times when I could partner them, sometimes I'm going to partner my strongest student at that table with the most, like the student who's struggling the most on that skill, because kids can learn better from kids sometimes. Other times I didn't want my struggling student to see such a gap in what they were understanding. So I'd partner them with someone who's just a little bit stronger in that skill. And that's the same way with sports. Like you want to learn from your teammates. You want to be pushed to grow and to challenge yourself, but you don't want to feel like it's so unmanageable.
Yeah.
And
so
out of
unattainable.
reach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's the reason why there are the different skill levels, is like, you definitely want your kiddo to get better within a skill level. Let's just say, and we'll use baseball as an example, in a AA team. And then you want them to move at some point, and you say, okay, get better within this skill level. Okay, move, get better within. If you're the best player in the space that you're playing in, are you truly challenging yourself to find new spaces?
No.
Or if you're the worst and it's so unattainable, can that be demotivating, intrinsic motivation?
And you need to have those kids, have those conversations with your kids. That's why it's good to sometimes, you have your kid that's set with a sports psychologist. You have your kid working with a mindset coach, like we offer, just so that the athlete can feel comfortable in having the conversations and get guidance. Because it's hard to navigate.
Yeah.
And they're young and sometimes they want to stay in a team with their friends. And it's like, yeah, those are your friends. They're still gonna be your friends.
Yeah.
But if you want to elevate your game or move to the next level, what does that look like for you? What would be best for you? And some kids are okay with not pushing themselves to the next level, and that's fine.
Yeah.
Because sometimes kids can be pushed too hard.
Yeah, for sure.
And they don't love it as much.
Well, and I will say, my biggest regret is like we played on a group with friends and my son, he loved it. And I think that took away his intrinsic motivation. He is very high on the partnership. He loves to feel supported. Who he plays with to him dictates how hard he wants to work, and because he wants to love it and he wants to, without that partnership being really strong, in hindsight, I can see how it definitely impacted his intrinsic motivation. But then also not having that intrinsic motivation impacted the rest of his team because he wasn't working as hard and he wasn't enjoying it as much. And so,
so it's a hard balance. And that's, it's like nutrition. It's specified to every kid. It's individualized. So yeah, that's CAP: competence, autonomy, and the partnership.
I love that. Put on your cap. So what strategies can we use to foster intrinsic motivation with an athlete? So we talked about kind of making sure CAP is really setting them up for continuing to be intrinsically motivated. But talk about a kiddo that how do you foster it in someone who doesn't innately have it?
So this, again, it goes back to the goal setting. And if an athlete or a kid, anybody who struggles with goal setting, get a mindset coach, get a coach who can work with you, because the goal setting process is crucial for this. The athlete has to understand how to set the goals, long-term and short-term, and it increases their sense of ownership and commitment. So there's that autonomy. So it's working with the goal setting, you're working on that autonomy. And the partnership also can be from a coach to an athlete or a parent to an athlete. I think we sometimes forget that not every kid is supported at home.
This is a great thing too, Lindsay, that I think you offer for coaches. So for coaches listening or parents listening who would want to pass this along to their coaching organizations, you can even help them if they wanted it to be from the coach to the kid, you can do workshops to help the coaches even set their kiddos up for success.
Yeah. We have a lot of different workshops that we do for mindset. And one of the workshops we offer, it is goal setting. It's the goal setting process, and it's resiliency, how to overcome setbacks, which is a part of this, because when they are owning and they have autonomy in their goal setting process, they are going to stumble and they're going to fall on their face and flounder with some of these goals they set. But there's that resiliency and okay, you know what? That's fine. I'm to shift my process. I'm going to reevaluate this and go about it a different way. And so you are developing that grit in the athletes.
Yeah. We should do a fun free webinar for parents, because I think oftentimes and maybe some parents are really great at this and some days I'm better than others, but even for parents to help them think about, how are you helping your young athlete goal set? The workbook is great. If you haven't checked out the workbook, I would get it and I would look through that at kind of journaling and setting goals. But and then the book will help with that as well. But just even doing it with them or sitting down and mirroring what it looks like. So, hey, here's my 5-year goal. Here's my 1-year goal. Here's my goal for this month.
We could even do a training on goal setting. Yeah. Because honestly, they used to teach goal setting, right? They used to teach it in school. I remember going through that process, but really my goal setting that I learned, the skill all came from sports. That was the world I was in. So I remember sitting down with my athletic director freshman year of high school. And he said, well, what are your goals? And I said, I'm going to play college basketball. And he was like, yeah, absolutely. What are your goals to get there? And I said, I'm playing AAU.
And you're like, I don't know.
I'm on 4 teams all year. And he goes, yeah, but what are your goals? And so every day during lunch for a whole week, and his name's Jack, and I mentioned him in the book in the beginning. Every day for lunch during that week, I was in his office and I was writing down goals. But he was like, okay, that's long-term. Put it on this side of the paper.
Yeah.
Okay, that's short-term. That's something you can do. And then we would pick some. And he was like, okay, what are the first ones you want to do? What do you want to focus on? And it was the timeline of it.
Yeah. Well, and I think back to SMART goals. So I think back to what we use in nutrition when we work with patients is is it specific? Is it measurable? Is it achievable? Is it relevant? Is it time-bound? And I think... And they can be all of those things in either a short-term or a long-term goal. But I think to your point, your coach was helping you filter through, what you were writing down might have been a bit of a longer term goal, and he would help you break it into smaller chunks. And I think sometimes for younger athletes, that's really helpful because they can see long and intermediate goals, but they might not even fully understand what short-term goals it takes to get there.
And when you get into the business world, the corporate world, education, we use a SMART goal setting process for all of our campus improvement plans.
Well, and let's be real, you're going to use it for the rest of your life. Yeah.
Like, okay, you're setting a goal to go back to college. Great.
You're setting a goal for a promotion. You're setting a goal for leading a team.
Absolutely. But what's your timeline? Is it practical, or you want to pay off all your credit card debt in 2 years? Well, listen, that's not practical based on your income. Like, look at really sit down.
You're going to have to either boost your income, you're going to decrease your spending. But I think, again, it just goes back to putting it on paper, measuring it, being able to truly, again, set goals against this. Like, intrinsic motivation, goal setting, there's some specific things in here, but like most of all these things, they're not just helpful for sports. They're helpful for life.
It's life. Yeah. And the second thing is promoting variety. So offering a range of activities that are aligned with our interests to maintain engagement. So, okay, you know what? Maybe we're not going to book a third soccer coaching one-on-one session this week. Maybe we're going to go watch a Houston Dynamo game.
Oh, I love that.
Maybe we're just going to sit and we're going to watch some football on Sunday as a family. It doesn't always have to be living on the court or in the field. Like, there has to be a change in that.
I love that. And I'll give two specific examples of organizations that we played with. And one of them, they did like shirts versus skin, and they would compete at the end of practice and almost have like a time where, again, just building that partnership, building that fun. And then the other one did this really fun. Everyone would dress up in Halloween costumes and play ball in their compete in their Halloween costumes, for fun seasonal times of year. Just, again, I think you don't even think about how much promoting that of sport and the joy and just kind of a variety to still within the game, but making it fun that reaffirms that intrinsic motivation.
Well, and I'm going to go back to, this isn't even just on parents for promoting variety, right? Coaches, it's huge for coaches because I think there's so much opportunity. You want to have a team dinner. You're going to have team gatherings. Man, we used to meet up every Thursday. We had a game. So every Wednesday night, it was one of the teammates' families was hosting the team for dinner. And you create that partnership. For CAP, you're creating that partnership, you're building relationships with teammates. So you have a stronger unit and there's more support there. So I think the variety isn't just something that, you have to think about. How am I, go to baseball at times. Let's go to an Astros game. Okay, cool. But it doesn't have to be on the parents. Coaches have so much power and influence over the kids that they are coaching. And I just think that the fun stuff sometimes gets put on the back burner. That's the most powerful.
Yeah, that's the stuff that keeps them wanting to come back. Again,
glues them together. The third thing is encouraging autonomy, which goes with autonomy and CAP. So allowing the athletes to have a say in their training plans and make their choices. If you're a coach and you need your kids to be working on their free throws, you don't have to do the same. You're taking 100 free throws every day. That doesn't have to be the same process. There could be different options for improving your shot. If you're doing strength, you need to decrease your time. You're running track. Well, there's lots of different running drills that can be done. So giving choice to the athlete is a huge way to boost their intrinsic motivation because they have that option.
Well, and if they want to do it and they picked it, they're a lot more, it's kind of like being in the kitchen where if they pick what we're going to eat and what's on the menu for tonight, they're more likely to eat it. Same thing with their workout plan. If they pick it, they're more likely to do it.
50 ladders this week. So you said you were doing this. So this is on you. Don't quit on that. The fourth thing is building trust and establishing a trusting relationship between the coach and the athlete to strengthen that intrinsic motivation. And I love that we talk about parents all the time, but literally coaches foster the intrinsic motivation more than anyone because you'll have parents being like, I'm going to give you $100 for hitting a home run. I'm not going to lie. Ex-husband said that to August the other week and I was like, we're just hit the home run. He wants, I want to, if they get this batting average, can I get a new bat? No. You can keep batting with that because there's kids in other countries that play with an old beat up bat from 1995. Yeah. And they're, it's not based on that. You have to do the work. So I think the coach part is important because the coach should know the athlete's goals. And should have those conversations. And if they're not, call the coach. You can always ask a coach, hey, would it be cool to meet with you with my kid? My kid has some questions. They want to talk about goals. I just want to be, you don't have to be an active role in it. If you know nothing about the sport, it doesn't matter. It's like you're supporting your kid and you're showing up. And even if you aren't, the coach is there to support. Sit down, have the conversations, encourage the kid to advocate for themselves and have the autonomy in leading those goal setting conversations, but let the coach be a part of that.
I just want to like stop for a second here, because I think this is such an important one. And obviously it's important to us, which is why we went into this sort of coaching business that we do. Like, the true definition of a coach is an individual who guides, instructs, supports someone, others, to develop specific skills, achieve goals, improve performance in a particular area. And I think sometimes, unfortunately, I mean, youth sports today is a very busy space, and there are a lot of coaches who are coaching for a lot of reasons. And so I would just say in this one, for parents that are listening, making sure that you have a coach who is there to guide, support, motivate, help set goals, help your kiddo improve their performance, grow, and develop. And if you don't have that, to be looking for that, because one of the biggest things in intrinsic motivation is you have to have that trusting relationship with athlete and coach, and athlete and teammates. And so these are things that, like, again, as we go back to environment, you as a parent can help foster these things to make your kiddo be more successful from an intrinsic perspective.
And the coach role is something that I have been really blessed to have done for coach, and then being an educational coach. So I coach teachers in their classroom, right? I'm not telling a teacher what to do. I guide them through the self-reflection process, and I'll say, okay, what did you love about this lesson? And then we talk about that. And it's like, okay, what are a couple things you want to work on? Like, what do you think didn't go as well as you wanted it to? And so my job is to support them to become a better teacher and build that relationship, so that when they're like, hey, I want to try this, I'm like, let's do it. Absolutely. Let them take the risk. And when you have that trust, an athlete is so much more willing to take risks for you and to push themselves.
Yeah, I love this. And I think being a coach is such a very different role. So I think about this. I took a course in my very first professional development. It was called Leader as Coach. And sometimes the best athletes aren't always the best coaches. So again, this is something I would say, like, just because someone played a pro sport or a collegiate sport doesn't make them a great coach.
God, no.
Sometimes it actually is the worst, because they can't get off the field. And one of the things you learn in leadership is that, like, you can't be on the field playing. You have to be on the sidelines, truly investing in all the others and all the pieces, or the individual if it's an individual sport. And so,
it's like a bike with training wheels. Right? You are helping your kid with those training wheels. As soon as they come off, you're holding the back of the seat and you're pushing them and you're going. When they're pedaling on their own, you're not holding on to the back of the bike, trying to steer
pedal for them,
you're letting them go. And you have to do that as a coach.
And I think this ties into the last one of, like, if your kid doesn't have intrinsic motivation and they need to get there, I think sometimes coaches that are too busy trying to be on the field and not off the field, they can't focus on the process, which is, I think, the last one you're going to talk to us about. And they can't help their kiddo focus on the process.
And the process is hard. The process is enjoying what you're doing, but knowing that it is so much work, and you're going to fail. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to keep recovering from that and reevaluating, to self-reflect here. What did I do? Okay, now what are my steps to fix that? If the athlete doesn't know, that's where the coach has to be like, hey, what do you think you need to do to improve on that? What would you do? Okay, those are good ideas, but what if you also did this? And then give them the tools to do that. But it's the conversation. And the process is, you have to become obsessed with the process. We say that a lot, right? Like, it is an obsession.
And it's uncomfortable, because like, even as adults, sometimes, like, I know even in the workplace, when I get feedback on something I need to change, I'm like, oh, I don't... But, you know,
but it moves your cheese.
Yeah, it totally does. So it's like helping our kiddos at a younger age, and think about that life skill throughout the time. And not all feedback is great feedback. I'm not saying, you know, sometimes we get bad feedback. People have ill intentions but being able to even teach at a young age, how do you filter through that feedback to be able to move forward, is like such an amazing skill.
And one of the mindset coaching sessions that I have is literally like, what to do. See eye to eye. How do you navigate that coaching situation? Because that's going to happen. You're going to have coaches that totally are on you, and you're like, no, this isn't. You're not. This isn't
like the podcast that we had. Like the podcast that we had, and it was the disagreement between coach and her top performing athlete.
Yeah.
And I feel like you're even for great coaches, even with great athletes, you're going to get to places. Well, even in, you think about the worst, you're going to get into places where you got too high performers or too high leader. And like, you're going to have to learn to navigate these situations.
Absolutely. And
but you want to navigate them in a way that's positive and grows
healthy, right?
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that kids need to understand is healthy is not always comfortable.
Yeah.
As an athlete, like you're not always going to feel comfortable in the situation, but if you are complacent and you're okay with comfortability, you're never going to improve. Like you have to become comfortable with being hearing things that may upset you or you don't want to hear or you don't like that criticism. It's there for a reason. So work through it, feel it, let it go to work. And that's, my dad taught me that. So.
Well, and that's good for, I mean, everything. Again, feedback isn't always super comfortable. Giving feedback isn't always super comfortable, but I think it's necessary. And what I've learned in my professional career, in my personal life, 9 times out of 10, the people who are willing to take the time to give me a feedback, they care the most.
Absolutely.
And they're giving me the feedback because they want to see me succeed and not the opposite. And I think sometimes, unfortunately, in youth sports, parents can be a real detriment to this because a coach can give our kiddo feedback and we almost kind of like reaffirm that the coach is wrong and we stand up for the kid and we say like, oh no, they're wrong, instead of saying, hey, take that feedback, like let's sit with it. Because of course there are perfect angels and they could never do anything wrong.
I actually know firsthand from somebody that I had a lot of time with as a teenager, and free time, he got in the car, it was like, oh, my coach said to do this and blah, blah, blah. And he doesn't know what he's talking about, blah, 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 blah. No. You don't know. You don't know. You're the athlete. You're 14. You're 15. Stop. Even if the coach was wrong, do not get in this car bad-mouthing the coach. Yeah. And then have it almost like the mom like backed it up. I'm like, what are you doing? He's never going to be able to have a job. He's never going to be able to hear criticism and not be like, oh, maybe I did mess up. Maybe there was another way to do this. Because now it's like, oh, yeah, I'm validating you. You're right. The coach is an idiot. Absolutely not.
Well, then everyone's an idiot who disagrees with you throughout the rest of your life.
So you're the right one and nobody else is right,
Yeah. I think there's always something to learn. Even sometimes in feedback, there's something we can learn.
Oh,
and so
all the time. I
think that it's just super important. Again, talking about intrinsic motivation and kind of looping this through. Like I love CAP. I love for your athletes who are naturally intrinsically motivated, using CAP. So competence, autonomy, partnership, strengthening those 3 things to help them stay motivated. But for those that are not, setting goals, making it fun, giving them some autonomy. So like letting them be in charge of what makes it fun and what makes it, the goals that they're setting, to build strong trust between the athlete, parents, and the coaches or organizations they're working with. And then staying focused on the growth and the process. Yeah. So I think these are awesome things for us to think about as parents as we either help get our athletes to be more intrinsically motivated or how to keep them intrinsically motivated if they are naturally that way.
I'm going to close out by saying this because I think it is relevant. When my youngest son was almost 2 years old, he really wanted to ride my oldest son's balance bike, and he was so little and the bike was too big and he couldn't sit on the seat and actually reach the concrete on the ground underneath him. And he kept falling, and I recorded it because he was really angry. So I said to him, well, do you want help? Because he was yelling. And he kept shouting, no. And so I didn't step in. I didn't intervene. But I realized there wasn't a reward or a prize for him at almost 2. The only thing that he was looking for was success in riding that bike, which was in his mindset that he was going to move that darn bike from point A to point B with no help at all. And I didn't stand in his way. And I think that's something that we can take away from this is like, you can't lose that internal desire and passion to do better and be better and accomplish goals. Like you have to keep that throughout your life.
Yeah, I love that. That's such a fun story. Well, and also you could have said, hey, keep working at it. I'll give you $100. Or you could have definitely changed the way. But I think, again, this goes back to one of the very first episodes we had about it's hard as a parent to watch your kids struggle a little bit.
You gotta let them.
It's hard to watch them fail and have to look at the feedback and sit with it. I mean, shoot, I don't even like to sit with my own feedback when I fail. Yeah. And so I want to protect my child from that, but you can't do that. We actually don't set them up for success when we do that. And
I think it's important for adults to realize that it's okay to model failing in front of your kid.
Oh, I'm like a pro at this.
Oh my gosh. I know I am.
I'm like, I am so sorry. Completely did that wrong.
We did that wrong. Failed at this. This fell apart. This didn't work, right? I don't care whether it's your marriage, whether it's your career, no matter what it is. It's okay to show them like, man, the bottom falls out sometimes, but it's not the end of it.
Yeah. It's more important what you do with it and from it. And so I love that. Well, I hope today was great for everyone listening. I always learned a lot in putting the book together. I always learned a lot in just visiting with you, especially as an educator and coach of young kids for so long. And I do think you do this so well with your boys of just coaching them to be these like kind of powerful little tiny humans that are very resilient and intrinsically motivated. And so I see August all the time and I'm like, man, this kid's got a work ethic. I love it.
It
So
does. Thank you. Well, stay tuned for future podcasts where we will bring on exciting guests in the sports world, highlight spotlight coaches, athletic directors, former and current collegiate and professional sports players, sports dietitians, sports psychologists, and more.
What you eat and how you think can transform your athletic performance and overall well-being. Whether you're an athlete, coach, or fitness enthusiast looking to gain that mental edge and optimize your health, this podcast is for you.
Don't forget to join the SPAN community and get more exclusive content by following us on all of our social media channels, including TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and X at @SPAN_athletics.
Until next time, stay faithful, stay fueled, and remain focused on your goals.